Bear with me, I'll be back with you in a minute.
Yeah.
Taking it from the top.
I already did my time. I paid for my crime. I already did my time. I paid for my crime.
If you're just tuning in, you are
already did my time.
In tune to World Jam Global Radio. Kervin, Julien on issues today.
I paid for my crime.
We are live.
I already did my time.
Going out across the world.
In the day, I didn't really care about the system. It was all about survival. It was do or die.
I do have a special guest on today.
Young and foolish to stay in school. I learned my
He's an activist.
There was not a man
blogger.
I was good with my hands and very quick on my feet. I was
social media commentator.
All over the
and now he's an author.
Money, life is so sweet. Now things have changed. The whole game has been rearranged.
Tony Sayers has been a long-time friend and a dear guest on this show.
It ain't about being no gangster.
And in a very short while, we're going to be talking to him about his new book.
Trying to cope with this living hell.
Are you living or just existing? I think that's the title. I got it wrong the last time.
Already.
But I'm quite sure that he's going to shake me up and put me in line and tell us the title of the book as soon as he comes on.
Already did.
Stand by.
I paid for my crime. Already did my time. I paid for my crime.
Wherever you are in the world, you can catch us on www.worldjamglobalradio.com.
I was a drug dealer. So
if you're on the smartphones, you can get it on the TuneIn app.
I'm not proud of what I had to do. That's why I'm telling my story to you and you. I had to repent. I must admit, I was doing all kind of stupid shit. Now sit back and think it over since I've gotten older. The life I used to live, I wouldn't do.
We have been celebrating 3 years of issues today.
Numb, I was a real Forrest Gump, but I was no.
Looking forward to many more shows to come.
Kid had a lot in common. I was the real Terminator, much meaner than Arnold Schwarzenegger. I'd chew you up and spit you out.
Don't forget, you can drop in any questions that you might have in the chat room on the website, or just send it direct via inbox, or put it on the post on Facebook, on Twitter. All the information is up there available for you.
Already did my time, paid for my crime.
But we're not going to waste much more time. We had a very an interrupted start. Sorry, we had a technical difficulty, I suppose is the correct term.
Already did my time.
But I can assure you we are now live.
Already did my time. Pay for my crime, pay for my crime, pay for my crime, pay for my crime. Already did my time. I paid for my crime. Already did my time. I paid for my crime. I'm trying to get this back.
And it's time to introduce my guest, Tony Sayers. Good evening, or is it good morning to you, Tony Sayers?
Good morning, Kervin. Yeah, it's just gone 1 o'clock in the morning here over in Thailand. So, but yeah, I've still got plenty of energy to go. So, wow. No worries there.
Well, the last time we spoke to you, Tony, you were in Cambodia.
Yeah, I like to get around. I've been back to the UK in between as well. I came back from Cambodia in May last year, and I had some talks around the country on certain different things, and catching up with people and seeing family and that sort of stuff. And but you know, I like the hot weather, so I sort of thought I'd get out by winter. So hence why I'm here.
I wouldn't blame you. It's been an absolute freezing winter here in the UK. We've sometimes the temperatures dropping down to -11 or -15 in some places.
Has the beast from the east disappeared yet?
Yeah, the beast from the east has been and gone, and now we've got the pest from the west, which is the wet rain.
It's interesting how they choose these names, isn't it? It's very fear-based, you know.
Yeah, it's always been that, though, isn't it? They've always tried to run fear and terror into the minds and the hearts of people, and having people preparing for the worst. And it never turns out to be as bad as they said it was going to be anyway.
Yeah, exactly.
So I kind of take it with a pinch of salt. Just remind us again, Tony, what was you doing while you was out in Cambodia? Because you were doing some mission work, wasn't you?
Yeah, I mean, I was doing a few different things. I was helping with one particular family that were very poor, and the father was disabled, and there's a few of us there that raised some money for him and put his kids into school. And obviously, people there are, they're very poor. But this particular family, they were in such a dire state. I mean, they had. Their house was getting flooded. They were wasn't even a house; it was a shack. And they were getting snakes like wash up in their underneath the wooden floor, and it was a right state and a right mess. And the guy, he had no legs. He'd spent all his life walking on his arms, making stuff to sell and selling it on the beach, but he got to the point where he couldn't use his arms anymore for that because he was getting arthritis, and so he couldn't work, he couldn't support his family. So there was a few of us that stepped in and helped that family, and we bought him like a moped, a special disabled moped, and with the money raised, and managed to get some new footing on the house and build a driveway, and not really a driveway, but like a ramp. So that was really good, and I was, I managed to write the majority of my book over there. I find it a lot easier to be creative in these kind of atmospheres. I don't know what it is, but I seem to have more creative energy that flows through me when I'm in Asia. And so, I was doing the book, and then I came back. Like I say, I had to see family and had some speaking events up and down the country, and I'm back out in Asia again. I'm training. I've just done a psychotherapy course, so I've got my fingers in a few different pies, and just back. And congratulations on the 3 years, by the way. It's I've been with you from almost the start, and like some of the stuff you're putting out is really powerful, and you're doing a great service to the world. So thanks for your service as well, Kervin.
Well, thank you very much, Tony. But it is really down to guys like you who agree to appear on the show and tell your story that allows us to bring out this information worldwide. And I think one of the things that I really do acknowledge that we have an advantage of here is that we're not regulated or governed by any form of authoritative body. They can't tell us who we speak to, they can't tell us what subject matter we could talk about, and they can't tell us what content we can put into our show. So everything is free, and it actually gives people like yourself an opportunity to be totally open and free with whatever you share. And because I've got no money, they can't sue me. That's good.
Have you heard, though, that there's, I don't know if you're aware, but there's a lot of alternative media channels that have been taken down from YouTube in the last few weeks?
Yeah.
Richie Allen's show was one. I was on another podcast with an American guy this morning, and he's had his channel taken down. And there's also the Natural News website that's just been taken down as well. So something's awry. They're a little bit worried about the amount of truth that's starting to surface now, I think. So I don't know how long it will remain unregulated. We just have to do the best we can whilst it's not, and push this home.
Well, that's the thing. I mean, the bottom line is whether they leave it up or take it down, they'll never be able to regulate us. So I suppose they could ban us, they could block us. But we've been quite fortunate up until now, and I think we'll continue to be so. But in the meantime, again, I'll repeat, it's through people like yourself who continue to support us and make yourselves available to share the truth as you believe it to be on this show, and let's long may it continue. So, Tony, you're in Taiwan at the minute. Thailand. Why did I say Taiwan? Is that T letter again, isn't it?
Right. I'm giving you some real grief today with the name of my book, the country that I'm in.
Oh,
Actually, you got the name of my book correct twice, so you did well.
I got it right twice.
You just fell down on the name of the country this time.
well, that's a big improvement. But so, what are you actually doing in Thailand at the minute? Is it just a respite, or are you on a mission? Is there work taking place there?
I'm going to start a second book. I've been doing a lot of blogging, researching as normal. I'm actually training. I'm going to continue training on some alternative work that I'm doing here as well. That's the reason that I'm here. But yeah, I just use the time to really, to get creative and put out truth in however way I can. Like, you know, I've got my YouTube channel, which I do vlogs on. I'm doing about 2 a week now. So I'm really motivated to do that. I'm talking about, you know, different aspects of what's holding humanity back and health and alternative health and what we can do to improve that and personal development. I'm really into personal development at the moment. Okay. Healing the inner child, you know, really the last year and a half, I've also spent a lot of time, you know, going into my emotional side and really working on that to become, you know, stronger in myself. And I think that's something that people tend to avoid, particularly men. We have a culture where there's lots of people that get gym memberships and stuff, but there's like not many people that want to do the inner work as well. Yeah. I was the same. I you know, 2 years ago I was like, well, I'm all right. You know, I've got a few things holding me back, but who hasn't, right? But, you know, I was shown that, you know, if we work with those aspects of ourselves, then we can become even greater and become stronger and you know, it just gives us more strength to go on and be the better versions of ourselves. So I've been doing a lot of that as well, which hasn't always been easy.
You've just spent quite some time out in Cambodia, and now you're out in Thailand. Has some of what you've seen out there motivated you and inspired you to change your life?
To be honest with you, it's living in the UK that motivated me and inspired me to change my life. When I'm here, you know, I'm very fortunate. I'm very blessed that I live. I mean, I've got a place that overlooks the ocean here, and you know, it's a lot cheaper. I mean, I look at what I'm paying for this compared to where my flat is in Essex, and you know, my flat in Essex is double to what this is. So it's a no-brainer really to be here for me. But you know, it's not for everyone. I enjoy the sun. The Thai people, you know, they call it the land of the smiles, and that's very true. And I think, you know, I think it's important that we're happy where we live, and I think when we're happy where we live, we can thrive. And I just, for me, I just find the UK hard. I feel like I'm being watched all the time. There's surveillance everywhere. There's police like extorting the public for no reason all the time, and you know, I just find it it's become more and more suppressive there for me. And like anyone, I guess I like freedom, and there's not many places left in the world where you can really experience the level of freedom that you can in Southeast Asia. I mean, literally, I mean, especially with Cambodia. I mean, I read it's the second most, you know, outlandish country in the world. You know, so there's literally anything goes there, which can have its problems as well. But you know, I like to feel free, and when I've got cameras watching me and like all that kind of stuff, it just, I don't know, it stresses me out. So it's actually living in the UK that inspired me more to come out here rather than the other way around.
Okay, so on that, you just a short while ago you mentioned the health, the well-being, and you know, the working out internally as well as externally. So I suppose one of the reasons why I asked you that question is that I go out to the Caribbean quite a lot. It's where my mother and my father live, and my father's just celebrated his 80th birthday. My uncle is 93, and every time I go out there, I'm seeing people that are living older and longer and healthier lives than I've ever seen here in the UK. I think I don't know anybody in the UK. I don't personally know anybody in the UK who are in their 90s. I'm not saying that there ain't any. I'm just saying that I don't know any. But when I go out to the Caribbean, I see many. I met my great aunts who are twins, and I met them when they were 108 years old.
Wow,
You know,
that's amazing.
And no, they were bedridden and they couldn't do much for themselves at that age, but they could still talk, they could still see, they could still remember faces. They weren't trained with dementia or anything else like that. They still remembered their family members that were around them and coming to visit them, and they could still tell you stories of how things used to be back in the day, so to speak. And I've met several other family members who have lived a very long and fruitful life. There are family members out there, for example, who are in their 80s, who are still going around their gardens picking out their own fruit to eat and stuff, you know, and doing a lot of things around the house for themselves. And some of them do get support from family members, their grandchildren and stuff like that, who pop around to visit and help keep the garden clean and that the kind of heavier work, so to speak. But these people still do stuff for themselves, and I don't see much of that here in the UK, because here in the UK, once they get to their 60s, we're already looking to farm them off to old people's homes somewhere. You know, we're already trying to find ways to discard them and take the inheritance money.
Exactly. And I think just to pick up on a point that you made there is that. You mentioned that they grow their own food. I mean, you look at the quality of the food in the UK right now. I mean, it can really barely be classed as food in some cases. I mean, like the fruit and vegetables, even if you buy organic, it's sprayed with pesticides, herbicides. These are cancer-causing properties. I mean, like, you know, you think about how crazy it is. You see the pictures of these people in those big bee suits spraying the crops so they don't get the poison on them, yet we're eating it. Hang on a minute, there's something wrong with that. Go on.
No, I was just going to say you're quite right. When you see them covered up with helmets, every part of their clothing covered, while they go and spray that, and then that's out in the supermarket, and we're just open to anything that comes from that.
Absolutely,
no protection whatsoever.
Yeah, I mean, sugar and like alcohol's everywhere, and I mean, really supermarkets should have a warning sign when you go into them. But unless you do the research and you look into what's in these, what's in these food products, then you're just going to go along with it, and that's what's happening. People are going to the supermarket, they're buying all the cheap crap's always on offer. You know, you walk into like an Asda's or a Sainsbury's, in the entrance you've got the £1 big box of Quality Street and the big bags of, like, I mean, don't get me wrong, my diet's not perfect, but the point I'm making is it seems like all the junk food is really cheap, and if you want to buy organic, you need to like take out a small mortgage or something. And you know, so we're eating very poorly. I mean, you look at the States as well. I mean, the GMOs. I mean, the obesity there. So I'm a big believer of medicine be thy food and food be thy medicine. And I think the food's really poor, and I think the stress as well. You mentioned that in the Caribbean, they're living long lives. They're out in their gardens still. Well, I mean, you look at the amount of hours people have to work here, and how hard they have to grind. It's no surprise that, you know, if they're not getting the right fuel as well. See, we get told that people are living longer. They're not. They're dying longer. Yeah. You're getting people, and like, I'm in my late 30s now. I mean, I've got people my age that have died, have had heart attacks.
Yeah.
I've had people with, diabetes, heart disease, they're my age. And they give them these pharmaceuticals, and then, of course, that makes the drugs companies a lot of money, and then makes them customers for life. So all right, they might get an extra couple of years at the end of it, but they've been sick for 30 of them, you know?
Here's the thing. I'm only going to just throw this out there, right? I'm really just going to throw this out there. I think five or six times now in the last few years I've been out to the Caribbean, and I go out regularly recently, and I'm back out there again June this year. But I've never come across a kid with ADHD.
Interesting.
I've never come across a kid with ADHD who's been medicated for mental health related issues at a young age. And going back, and I'm 56 years old, Tony, so born in 1961, and I've seen many things. And when I was younger, you know, they relate a lot of paranoia to cannabis smoking and that kind of thing. But in all of my years growing up, and we were heavy cannabis smokers in my community, I only know of 2 individuals of my generation that were hospitalized with mental health related issues that could be considered to be paranoia. 2.
Yeah.
And I lived in a very predominantly black, heavy smoking community. So where I work in engineering, we talk about change point management. So the questions I would have to ask is, what changed? What changed to make that statistical numerification increase by almost 90% to where you're now looking at the majority of individuals being hospitalized for paranoid schizophrenia or mental health related issues are now young and not old. What changed?
Well, it's the vaccines, isn't it? That's what changed. I mean, in the US, it's like, I think it's 60 vaccinations by the age of 6 or something. So, you know, I don't know if you've looked into some of the stuff that's in these vaccines, like mercury, and it's you know, it's a real deep rabbit hole. But you know, I would encourage any of your listeners to research the amount of toxins that are in vaccinations these days. And I think that's why all these childhood behaviours have appeared out of nowhere, along with the food and stuff.
Absolutely. I mean, there is a combination. It's not just any one thing, but I'll give you another example. I was also a qualified chauffeur back in the 80s, and I worked for a very rich man in Piccadilly, just opposite the Ritz Hotel. He owned his own merchant bank, and he was adamant that every one of his members of staff had to have the flu jab. Now, I'd never had the flu jab in my life, and furthermore, flu was not something that I was afflicted with at any time. You know, at this current moment in time, I've now gone over 5 years without visiting a GP or taking a day off work, right, for sickness, right? But the one and only time that I was forced to take a flu jab because my boss, my employer, insisted that I did, is the one and only time I got the flu.
Exactly. It just happened to my dad just recently. He had the same. Yeah, he went and got the flu after the flu jab. It's like, hello.
You know, I don't think a lot of people will get that. And there you have it. You've got these people that do this thing year in and year out. You have companies that insist that their workforce need to take the, and because it was his bank and he was rich, he was insistent. Nobody was working for him without having this flu jab. But it created more sickness in the workplace than it prevented. And I suppose we've got to be asking ourselves, what are they basing the evidence of what they're producing or forcing us to take? What are they basing it on? Back in the day, I remember when they used to produce medication or new vaccine, they trialed it for 10 years or whatever it was, and so that they can actually check out the longevity of it. They can look at what the impact of it and the effects of it, what the long-term effects of it were, and they don't do that anymore, do they? Everything is rushed through for market reasons, for marketable reasons, for financial reasons, because people want to make a quick win, and even some of the results are fabricated in order to push things through. And even when you watch some of the movies that I'm not a conspiracy theory type of guy, right? So I'm not raising conspiracy theory here, but what I will say is every time you watch a movie that has some of these weird kind of things going on, you better bet your bottom dollar that they've got the idea from somewhere.
Yeah,
you know?
Absolutely.
When you're talking about people being wiped out by this vaccine or wiped out by this or this particular event taking place, you know, I believe that, you know, the idea has come from somewhere. Something has happened to trigger off this thought process that says to someone, let's make a film. Even if they're not going to be honest and tell us, I can't help but believing it. You could take that right back to AIDS, can't you?
Well, I mean, you look at it, right? How many of these killer diseases have we had over the years? I mean, it's like Ebola, SARS, swine flu. The list goes on, and there's always a quick vaccine for it, isn't there?
Yeah.
I would just encourage people to, if your company's telling you to vaccinate, or the school is telling you to vaccinate, the school puts so much pressure on. I mean, do you know, right, in Australia now, if you don't vaccinate your children, you don't get your benefits.
Really?
That is forced vaccination by proxy, forced vaccination, and that can never be right. That can never be right. Now, ask yourself this: why, in a so-called free society, would they force a parent to vaccinate their child? Something's not right, conspiracy theorist or not.
Absolutely, and I don't buy into the conspiracy theory as such. But what I will say is we're fully aware of world domination and those that are trying to dominate the world. It's any fool can see that by the way that we're governed. I suppose if you take something as silly as Donald Trump, that was destined to happen for what's about to take place, as far as I'm concerned. And who would have thought, right, that Donald Trump would have actually won an election, a sexist, racist thug who can't string a sentence together without looking like a buffoon, right, is now speaking for the world.
Well, I mean, it just... I think we've had this conversation on previous shows, Kervin. I think, you just look at that as an example, how people can still think politics is somehow beneficial or
even necessary anymore.
Yeah, I mean, like you say, out of 330 million people in the States, they come up with Trump and Hillary Clinton. Yeah. I mean, how does that represent any kind of democracy or choice? It's an illusion. Yeah. These people are hand-picked. They know who's going to go into office. And
they were either going to be governed by a crook or they were going to be governed by a crook. But they had no choice in the matter. They were going to be governed by a crook.
Yeah, but you know what's frustrating about it is the hysteria now that surrounds these elections. I mean, first of all, there seems to be an election every month now, whether it's the UK or the US. And what they've cleverly done, and I can see this, is that people were starting to lose faith in politics, rightly so, because it's a sham and it's a charade. But they saw that people were starting to lose faith in it. So what they've done, and it's genius, really, is they've made it like a Big Brother show.
Yes, reality TV.
So you have these politicians now that are now celebrities, right? And the mass hysteria that gets created, I mean, it's like an energy harvest. It's like a big ritual in and of itself. So they've made the Trumps of this world, the Clintons, and they've made it into like a big reality TV show where, they go in for that. Where is it where they talk at each other towards the end, and it's like a big standoff, and it's like, oh, did you see that she said this and he said that? And like all the time, I've got a feeling that people that are really pulling the strings, that, I'm talking the weapons manufacturers, the bankers, the shadow government, they are sitting around their banquet tables laughing their heads off at us putting our little cross in a box every 4 years, thinking that that's going to change anything. And I don't know when the penny's going to drop for people. It really frustrates me.
It reminds us of that old card trick that people used to play. I don't know if you remember it. I surely do. It's where you have the deck of cards and you look at the pack and you see the 10 of diamonds, and you put the 10 of diamonds somewhere in the middle of the pack, right? And you put the pack in your pocket or whatever it is, and then you'll say to the person, now I want you to think of a suit, red or black, and they say black, but you really wanted them to say red, right? Because you've picked the 10 of diamonds, They go black, right? Okay, so that leaves the red then, right? So hearts or diamonds. So they pick hearts, and you go right. So that leaves diamonds, right? High or low, and they go low, and you say right. Well, that leaves high then, doesn't it? So from 10 to king, which one? Well, they go king. Well, that leaves 10 to jack and queen to an ace. What do you want then? And until you've got them pinned down to the 10 of diamonds, and you go right. Okay, turn over the card, and there's the 10 of diamonds. And that's what's happening to us. We're actually being directed to the 10 of diamonds because they've already picked the 10 of diamonds. It was always going to be the 10 of diamonds. There was never an alternative choice. It was going to be the 10 of diamonds.
Exactly.
And we're walking away thinking that we've got a victory.
Exactly. Yeah, it's the illusion of choice. You're right. But I actually, I'm at the stage now where I find it embarrassing. And I really mean that. I actually find it embarrassing that humanity continues to believe these people, continues to hang off every word they say, and ultimately continues to hand over their power. There's always war from these people. There's always tax evasion. There's always stories of, abuse and that kind of thing that surface. There's always this stuff, and there is always letdowns, and I'm embarrassed by it. I really am. I feel like, God, if you cannot see that this is all an illusion by now, and these people are owned by the weapons manufacturers, the bankers, and shadow governments, then I don't know. I don't know what else to say about it. It's. I know people want to look for someone to change what's going on here, but looking at the people that created this chaos is not the answer.
But probably not. But still, some people would say that we couldn't live without some sort of leadership. We couldn't. Well, we wouldn't manage. We wouldn't cope. Things wouldn't get done.
Well, I mean, this is like this crops up like what do the I mean, imagine tomorrow there was no government. I mean, like, God, I think it would be great. Imagine. Okay, all right. Let's play devil's advocate. Right, there may be a period of chaos to start with for a little while. Yeah, I'm willing to risk that chaos to get rid of these clowns. Yeah. Right, I don't mind a bit of chaos for maybe 6 months, a year, maybe even 2 years, if it means that future generations can have a different way. So think about it, right? Like, the roads would still get built, that all these things would still happen. We would just, I mean, if our level of consciousness as a race is that we don't feel that having psychopathic leaders, if we feel we need psychopathic leaders to wipe our backsides, our own level of consciousness. I mean, it's like that's kind of like and I talk about this in my book. It's basically what we have here is we have the babysitters from hell looking after us, and that's what we're dealing with. So it's like, I'm willing to risk maybe trying a slightly risky route that hasn't maybe been tried before.
But is that not just born of the sheer frustration and dissatisfaction from having an absolutely unacceptable standard of governing?
It's born from a mindset that I haven't always had, but again, I talk about it in my book, is the belief in authority. When you are born, this is my opinion anyway, when you are born on this planet, by the very grace of God or universe or the creator, whatever you're believing, you already have freedom. You are your own authority. You are a sovereign being. And nobody, as long as you're living by universal law, which is cause no harm, cause no loss to other beings, as long as you're living by that rule, That's the only rule that you have to live by. Every other rule is man-made, and it's null and void, basically. And so we are born sovereign, and it's the very belief in authority that is holding us back.
It would have to be agreed by most when you consider 5% of the world is or 95% of the monies of this world is owned by 5%, or for whatever those stats are. Because the bottom line is there are so many billionaires, but yet there are billions and billions of poor people living in poor countries in poor conditions, while the rich get richer and the fat get fatter, so to speak. But when you look at how we are being led, we've always been led somehow. But what do you think was the start of bad leadership? Because I think there's always been leadership, hasn't it? Even if you go back to the Indians and the African tribes, they've always had a chief or a council, of so to speak, that upkept the morals and principles of the village.
And that's the key point. That those two words that you mentioned there, morals and principles, those were there in all the and they weren't all perfect. These tribes and these these ancient tribes, they had their issues. But if you look at the Native Americans, for example, they were all about morals and principles. Yeah. I mean, they used to plan for 7 generations ahead of themselves. Right? We don't even plan for our generation that we're living in. Yeah. And this is the level of consciousness and that's why ultimately they were slaughtered. Yeah. 100 million of them, because they knew spiritual law and they adhered by it, and they knew how this universe operated, and they knew what they could do and what they couldn't do, and they knew about natural law or cause and effect, do no harm to others. And I guess, I don't know because I didn't live with them, but from what I've read is that there were leaders, but they were very much all had to be in agreement. So are they called the wigwams, the tent things? Yeah. So I read, I don't know if you've heard this, but they have, and I can't remember the name, but they have in their meetings they have a stick, right? And the stick would be passed around to everyone in the circle until they've had their say. They've had their say. And if someone didn't agree, the stick would carry on being passed around between people until they all came to a joint agreement, all of them. And that is the difference between what we're seeing now, with where you get one person says, right, we're doing this, even if you didn't vote for it, tough luck. Mm-hmm. That's not consent by all. That's just, this is the point. Like if I don't vote Conservative and I vote Labour, I'm still governed by rules that I didn't agree with. So that's not freedom. That's coercion on their part towards me, because I didn't want that. But in those cultures, they all there were leaders, but those leaders were of a higher consciousness, and they were, as you said, based in morals and principle. And that is the key words that are missing. These people are only interested in more war, in more money, in more just in more wealth for themselves, and what's in it for them. I don't want people like that leading me, and neither should anyone else. And it doesn't matter who stands up, because they're all the same, and they are all the same. They might present themselves as the good guy, your Bernie Sanders, your Jeremy Corbyn, but they all do a U-turn right at the end when it matters. And we just don't ever seem to learn from that. And I don't understand it, and that's why I said I get embarrassed by it, because I see the hysteria of flag waving people at Trump, and I'm thinking, man, I wouldn't even let this guy walk my dog. Do you know what I mean? Let alone run the country, run the United States of America. and you've got all these people cheerleading him, and it's like, oh my God, am I really part of this?
Yeah.
And I don't know, maybe that comes across a bit arrogant, but it's just, it is frustration, because I know, I innately know that we as humans and as a species are so much better than this. We've got so much unlocked potential. We've got so much greatness within us. But we've just been divided. We've been pitted off against each other. And Muslims against Christians, against blacks, against whites, against gays, against straights. And you never hear in the news how, perhaps a Muslim and a Christian got together and they did a great thing for their community. And that does go on.
Absolutely.
And, just divide and conquer all the time. And while we're battling against each other, these people will continue to thrive. And it upsets me, because I know we've got so much more potential than just being the rats for these people. I'm not a rat, and I don't subscribe to being a rat, and neither should anyone else. And giving our power over to, like I say, these babysitters from hell is really the last thing that we should be doing.
Do you know, there are two things that stop us uniting as a people across all nations. Two things that I think stand out for me in particular: propaganda and hate. Propaganda is what they use to keep us separated, and hate is what we tend to generate within ourselves about those that they tell us the propaganda about. And you're right when you talk about Muslims and Christians who both happen to believe in God, just in a different way. And I think there is no civilization known to this planet who hasn't believed in a form of God, even without coming into contact with one another. So God is very real to civilization in one way or another. He's whatever you choose or choose not to believe, there is a God that is real to this world. And a lot of those principles that come from religion are normally good principles, but are mistreated and misrepresented by those who have the authority over it all. So we continue to be misled, whether it be in religion, whether it be in government, parliament, where we are here in the UK, or in any other, and it's even a company, for example. You go into the workplace, and when you go into the workplace, you go in there with a sense of motivation, enthusiasm, optimism, expectation, anticipation. You have all of these things going on inside of you as to what this might lead to. And you go in there at one level, and after a couple of days you start thinking to yourself, well, I could really make a difference here. I could do this or I could do that. I could really see this company. And before long, you find yourself caught up in the internal politics of what the management, or the way that management want you to see the company and its role in the community or whatever. And all of this stuff that you first walked in there with, all of this optimism, all of this anticipation, all of this expectation, all of this motivation, all of this heartfelt community concern and spirit seems to just get dwindled away as you get caught up in the mechanics of the conglomerate machine, so to speak. But when you spread that out into the world now, as we live, right, is that not what's happening nation by nation?
Yeah, absolutely. You use a good analogy there. Yeah, it gets diluted. That you think about it, right? If you take it down to like a microscopic level, if you're in your community, generally, well, I don't know what it's like in your community, but generally people are okay with each other. You don't see all this hate everywhere. But it just gets ramped up. And I mean, a few years ago, I'm sick to death with all this like Muslim bashing that goes on in the UK. I mean, talk about hypocrisy, right? All these people that say this about Muslims and Islam and immigrants. This is the big one. They say, oh, immigrants are coming here and they're not speaking English and they're taking our jobs. These are the same people that go over to Spain, cannot speak a word of Spanish, go into a restaurant, expect to have Carlsberg on tap and an English fried breakfast. Right? These are the same people that are saying that.
And get drunk and come outside and puke all over people's...
Absolutely. I mean, talk about hypocrisy. There's 1 million Brits over there. I bet you could count on probably a few hands how many could actually speak Spanish. And anyway, that was going off on a bit of a tangent, but I just wanted to point out the hypocrisy there. But yeah, you're absolutely right. It's divide and rule. It's like dilute this potential unity. I mean, that's their worst nightmare, isn't it? If we all got together and said, okay, you're a Muslim, you're a Christian, you don't believe, you're an atheist, you're a spiritual person, you're a black person, you're a white person, you're gay, you're straight. You know what? It doesn't matter because we're all in this together. It doesn't actually matter. So what we do is we just put our beliefs to one side and we'll work together to create a better community for all, where we can celebrate our different cultures and our different beliefs in a way that doesn't alienate people, but we're interested in it. We want to learn about it. But they have turned that and they've made it into something that they can use against us.
Do you know, Tony? I regularly go to a place called the 87 here in Coventry. It's a leisure centre. And one of my most therapeutical moments is the steam room and the sauna, and I go regularly. Did you? I go there regularly, and about 2-3 years ago, I started going when they first opened up the new steam room in the 87, because I used to go to the Coventry Leisure Centre at first, and then I started coming up to the 87 here. But I did the same thing at Coventry Leisure Centre as I was doing here as I'm doing here at the 87. But there's a group of us. There's about 8 or 9 of us who meet regularly in that steam room, men, and there's a couple of women that go in there as well. And out of that group of people, there's me, and there's probably a couple more that are Christian. There's about 3 or 4 that are Muslim. There's 2 that are definitely atheist, right? And there's a Scientologist who believes in the evolutions and the science of it all. But we regularly sit in that steam room and we talk about the current things that are going on around the world, right? And we always seem to agree with each other, right? But when you start talking about because there are, out of these Muslims, there are people there from Asia or African continents who have Muslim contingents. They're all white, black, Indian. There's a real mixture of us sitting in that steam room, right? And nobody is offended by what is said by another. We speak openly, we speak bluntly, we speak honestly, but we all come out of there with a better understanding of each other and us. Now, if you was to put that on a wider platform, right, you just couldn't see that happening in the House of Parliament, could you? I mean, I just want to say this. When they gave us Sky TV, right, and at one point, I'd never seen it before, but when I first started watching Prime Minister's Question Times, and the Houses of Parliament started to be an open thing that you could see on TV, because when I was young, we never saw any of that. And the politicians were the people that you really held with high regard. They had the most respect in the world, so to speak.
The irony. But
then you started watching these Prime Minister's Questions, and you started watching these political debates in the House of Commons and Parliament, and then you'd see a whole string of name calling and petty people bashing and instead of trying to put a point across, they were trying to be condescending to one another, calling each other names and trying to make jokes about each other, and trying to make each other look stupid and see who could make each other look the worst and sound the worst, or see who can get more people to laugh at the guy that's speaking. And I started to watch it and I thought, That's no difference to me and my mates in the playground, really, is it?
Mhm.
Do you know what I mean? And yet these guys are
Yeah.
getting paid 60 and 80,000 and £100,000 a year to do this. And these are
They've
the
just
same.
given themselves a pay rise, didn't they?
Yeah,
77 grand or
but
something.
these are the same people that make the decisions that make the world go round.
Yeah,
Right?
I know, and we want to continue to give them power.
And you ask yourself, which one's more entertaining, Jeremy Kyle or the Houses of Commons? And I'll tell you what,
Yeah.
it's a 50-50 for me, because there's not much difference
Yeah.
between the two. The behaviour pattern between the two ain't much different. Right? You watch Jeremy Kyle on a Monday or a Tuesday morning or whatever it is, and I do watch it. I'm a sad git. I do watch it. My wife
Is that your
laughs at me.
guilty pleasure? Is
That's
it,
my
Kervin?
that's my guilty pleasure. But I do watch it and I laugh a lot. I don't watch it because I take it seriously. I actually laugh a lot. And I say to people, even in my workplace, I say, this programme is going out around the world. And people think that that's what most of us in England are like. Right? They're watching this, and this is a representation of who we are and what we're meant to be. Right? People are watching these chavs and these guys coming in with their walks and their pants round their knees, and that's a representation of this country. We're exporting that, right, worldwide, and saying to people, "This is us. This is Britain." But when you compare that to the Houses of Parliament, the mentality, the behaviour, right, isn't much different.
No, totally agree.
Right? So where did they get the idea from, Jeremy Kyle? I reckon they got it from the Houses of Parliament.
Yeah, probably.
Right, legit.
It's funny. It's funny because I remember I must have been about 10 years old, and I walked past the TV one day, and I saw all these people shouting at each other. Now I know it was question time, and I remember saying to, I can't remember whether it was my mum or dad, I was like, "What's that?" And they were like, "Oh, these people are the ones that run the country." And I remember at 10 years old thinking, "You're having a laugh, aren't you? These are the people that run the country."
Absolutely. They call each other names. They tell jokes about each other. You know, I just didn't get it. And so I got intrigued. I actually started to watch it more often, Tony. I made a point of watching Question Time and the Houses of Parliament more often. And the more I watched
that's it, isn't it? It's like a Big Brother show. You know, that's what it's like. It's like entertainment now. I don't know. If it wasn't so tragic, it would be funny, because unfortunately those people are then dropping bombs.
They're making the decisions that rule the world.
I mean, what? I mean, I was so shocked when I went back to the UK last year. The amount of homeless people in my hometown really upset me. I mean, Southend in Essex.
Yeah.
You know, that literally the high street was lined with people. Now, for people that are living in the UK permanently, it's probably been a slow process and you don't notice it as much. But for me, I hadn't been in the UK for 2 years almost, and when I come back, oh my God, it was such a big difference. And it breaks my heart to see so many people that are struggling like that. So, and then you've got these clowns doing that, giving themselves pay rises, 77 grand, the latest one, and shouting at each other and falling asleep in the Houses of Parliament. I mean, you know, they're taking the pee and
then it's voting time and they're putting their hands up, but they haven't heard a word that's been said.
Yeah, and then we're giving them more power. I mean, what are we doing? It's like these people don't give a you know, they don't care.
You know, going back to this homeless thing, Tone. I don't know if you know, but I ran my own homeless charity I directed it for 8 or 9 years.
I remember you saying.
And I still work with it. And I stepped down in 2013 because I was going through a difficult time with me and my wife. But I went back to it last year. When I went back to it, the shock that I got, people that I was serving 4 years ago were still in the same predicament, but in Coventry there was never that many rough sleepers on the street. We had a lot of homeless people in Coventry, but they were travelling, and there was a lot of sofa surfers back then. But now if you go into the town centre on any given day, the amount of people that are sleeping on the streets, it's phenomenal. and that has been repeated right across the country. So I'm not surprised that you've seen an increase in Southend. Because
But you know what, right? Even more disturbing than that is that they can now be arrested or fined when they haven't got
they've got no money, they've got nothing.
Money,
Nope.
and they can be fined. I mean, seriously, what is this? What is going on? What are we doing?
And we have a government that's making it more difficult for them to find somewhere to live, accommodate them in any way, or support them to be able to find somewhere to live. And what we've got is an absolute continuous breakdown in the family infrastructure. I'm going to raise this issue because I'm not even sure if that's where we were meant to go. We were going to go.
No, I agree with it.
Right?
Yeah, it's good. It's an important one.
But I'm looking at social care and social services and the way that they're breaking down the family, putting children in care until they're 18, and then chucking them out onto the streets at the age of 18. And these children have been brought up with frustration, bitterness, resentment that they've been taken away from their families at a young age, have lost their identities, and now they're being sent out into the world to go and find themselves. And you know how many of those people who have come from care you're finding now as drug addicts, alcoholics, or homeless? The number is absolutely multiplying. I worked at the Salvation for 4 years. And do you know what? The one thing that used to shock me was when a social worker used to turn up for an interview, right, with a client that they are just about to release from care. You're telling me you've had this person in care for 12 years, 13 years, 15 years, whatever, however long you've had them, and now that they've reached 18, you've got nowhere for them to go. You've got no move-on plan for them. So your next best bet is to bring them into a homeless hostel full of heroin-taking addicts.
Mm. Yeah, it's,
what chance has that kid got?
It breaks my heart. And then you've got a queen that sits on a golden chair with a golden hat. She owns most of the land in the world. She could, she's not even paying any taxes. And then
she can take one of those diamonds off the crown and eradicate homeless in a stroke.
And then we're out on the streets worshipping her when she has a birthday. And there's people in her country lining the streets homeless, and she's giving us lectures on austerity. I mean, it's crazy. This world is crazy. What we accept as normal is absolutely crazy. Honestly, and it all goes back to that belief in authority. Because if we didn't believe that someone who has just happened to have been born into a family has more rights than others, then there'd be a more equal playing field, and we wouldn't buy into the joke that it all is. But for some reason, we haven't managed to figure it out yet. That just because you're born into a certain family shouldn't give you any more rights than the man who's collecting rubbish bins on a Monday morning. He's no better than the Queen. In actual fact, he probably is better than the Queen, but that's for another show. But this is again that diseased mindset of a belief in authority. It's Stockholm Syndrome. Have you heard about Stockholm Syndrome?
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, this is where, for listeners that don't know, it's there. I think it was in the 70s. There was a bank robbery in Stockholm, Sweden, and I think it was over the period of 3 days. And what they found is that the hostages, after a period of time, were actually defending the hijackers. Yeah. And it's like a mental schism that goes off, whereby there is like a kind of an affection for the slave master or whatever you want to call it. And this is what is happening on a mass scale. We are suffering from amnesia. We have been hypnotized by a spell, that spell being the belief in authority. And we have got so far down the line with it that we've got Stockholm Syndrome. This is proven by the fact of what we were talking about. A woman that pays no taxes, has everything in the world, doesn't contribute in that way. And we've got homeless people, we've got needy people, and then when it's her birthday or she's been she's like celebrating a jubilee, we're waving our silly flags like idiots, and we just want more. We just want more and more of it. It just doesn't make sense. We've got to wake up from this spell. It's a spell. We're much better, much greater, much more powerful than they are if we all came together and realised our own sovereignty and realised that this belief in authority is at the very basis of the problem.
And, you know, here's the thing. There's a lot of attention being put on these benefit scroungers, you know, dull dossers and those that are the parasites of the benefit system. And yet some of the biggest damage being done to our economy has been the widespread tax avoidance, which they consider to be legal, right? Where all of these rich bods in this country who we go and invest or spend our money with, take their profits and go and export it to a foreign bank where they don't have to pay any taxes on. And that causes more damage to our economy than any of the benefit scroungers or dull dossers across the country that people want to persecute.
It's all the immigrants' fault, isn't it? Yeah, it's not Google or Amazon or McDonald's that are evading billions of tax each year, is it?
Here's the thing: when I said at the beginning of the show that I was a chauffeur, and my governor owned his own private merchant bank. This is where I learnt about this. Now, he had a bank. It was Robert Fraser's and Partners, and it was based in Piccadilly. And some of his clients were the Conservative MP. Well, he was one of the actually quite directors, actually, Nicholas Soames, Ralph Halpern from the Jewellers. What's his name? Jeffrey Archer. Sir Jeffrey Archer was one of his clients. Robert Maxwell, before he went disappearing off a yacht, was one of his clients. And the brothers, Kevin and Ian, or the sons, Kevin and Ian Maxwell, were clients. Those were the type of clients that he had. Now, when Colin left the army, he was an army fella. When he left the army, he worked for a guy called, I don't know if you heard of him, Peter de Savary.
No, I've not heard of him.
Peter de Savary was a yachtsman who had an office out in Mayfair. And Colin went to work for him as a clerk. And after a little while, Colin made a deal with him. Colin said, I would work for you 3 days a week free of charge if you allowed me to use the facilities of your office for 2 days a week. And that was the deal he had with Peter de Savary. And the 2 days a week is where he built up his business of tax avoidance consultant. That's what he was. He was a tax avoidance consultant. And within a short space of time, he bought Robert Fraser's, the bank in Piccadilly. He bought it for about 5 mil, right? Bought it outright and was the leader, the chairman and chief executive, etc. And then put his trustees committee in. And I remember once, right now, do you remember when you used to go, you've been to Gatwick, right?
Yeah.
As you come off the M23, you come up to Gatwick, and then you turn right, heading towards, and there was that's that plot of land that's now an industrial estate, just as you go across. Well, can you remember when that was just green?
Yes.
Okay. So, Robert Fraser and Partners owned that land, right? And I can remember while I was driving for them as a chauffeur, Nicholas Soames, who was one of our directors, right, doing a TV interview from that plot of land about how it was going to be, the government are looking to make it accessible, to expand Gatwick and blah, without anybody actually realizing that they were doing that because the company that he was a director of owned that bit of land. But they, you know what I mean? So could you imagine the amount of millions that they made when that was pushed through the Houses of Commons to use that land, to develop it, to make the industrial estate that it's now become?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the great comedian George Carlin, I think he famously said once that there's a big club and you ain't in it.
Yeah. Well, we weren't in it. I was just the driver, and it was quite funny actually because I was actually at home listening to this interview and thinking, well, that's the plot of land that Colin told me about, because we'd driven past it when I was dropping him at the airport, and he told me that they owned it, so I knew they owned it. Yeah. But we're talking about, are you living or just existing, right? And to me, I think the rest of the planet, most of the planet, are just existing, because there are far more options available for them to find a productive way of living that takes them outside of some of the circles that we've just been talking about.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's kind of like been ring-fenced as what we can do, really. I mean, there's very limited options. I mean, even I feel sorry for the young people coming through. I mean, like, I think my generation was the last generation where you could leave school without any qualifications and still get a decent job. There are options around, and you know, if you went to university, chances are you could find a job in your chosen field. But now there's like, you know, you're lucky.
University is no guarantee for a job.
No, exactly. But you know, the parents, they push their kids. I mean, if I was a parent, I think I'd tell them not to bother. Yeah. So we're now. I think I read an article a few months back that there was, I think, over 1,000 applicants for one job in Costas, in one of the London branches. 1,000 applications for one job to make coffee. And yeah, I mean, like, I guess this is what I try and get across in the book. You know, we all know the problems. They continue to exist, the problems, that is. What are we going to do about it? And that's the next stage. It's like, do we... Because we're at a crossroads now, and I think something higher is pushing us to evolve and really asking us to find some courage, because many people are, you know, scared or concerned about, like, if we were to perhaps stand on our own feet, but, you know, there comes a point where enough is enough, and, like, when the streets are lined with homeless people and the 1% are creaming off all the taxes and giving themselves pay rises, and we've always got war all the time. There's never any.
But war makes money, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And you know, there comes a point where it's like the bully in the playground analogy. You know, the bully picks on this one kid every day. And you know, it goes on day after day after day, and then one day something just clicks in that kid, and he just says, "I'm not having it anymore. Just not having it anymore." And I'm not saying we have to fight back or hit back or riot or, you know, anything like that, or go around smashing windows. It's a mindset change that I'm talking about. It's waking up from the amnesia, waking up to our true power, and waking up to the fact that just because we haven't got men and women in dark suits ordering us around doesn't mean that we cannot thrive and we cannot prosper, because we are at our full potential, I believe anyway, so much more than what we're showing up now, which is basically a bunch of Big Brother fans that are voting for the next housemate in. It's a circus, but
it's not even funny.
It's not funny, and we've got to wake up. We've got to wake up from this and realise that we can make a difference. All of us can make a difference in our own way. That's a lie. That's a lie we've been fed, because that keeps us down. That keeps us consciousness down, and it keeps them more powerful. We have got powerful. We have got power individually, collectively. We need to lay down the lines of divide and rule, realise who the common enemy is, and we just say no more. We've got to fall in love with that word no, and we're not having it anymore. And if everyone done that overnight, you know, imagine overnight everyone said, "Well, I'm not paying your taxes." Okay, if one or two persons said it, why should I pay taxes when the Queen doesn't? Why should I pay taxes when Theresa May's husband doesn't? It's just come out. Yeah. Why should you, Kervin, a family man, I've got no doubt that you probably do, work your fingers to the bone on your time off, do things like this to try and help the world. Why should you pay taxes, and people like that do sod all, not pay anything? Google, McDonald's, all these companies that are these parasitic, we're talking about a parasitic infection.
Yeah.
That's what we've got. If you want to use another analogy, we've got an infection, and that infection is governments, corporations, capitalism, and consumerism.
Yeah.
It's infected society. It's got into our minds, and it's given us a mental disease. And that's the way I see it. So the book is very much about waking up from that mental disease that we've got into in many levels, not just on authority. I do see that as the basis, but self-responsibility. You know, I ask this to people, like, you've got kids. What are you doing? What are you doing when they're poisoning the food? What are you doing when, you know, there's people homeless around you? There's no opportunities. Are you just sitting there watching Jeremy Kyle or Big Brother? Not you do a lot, Kervin. I'm not pointing that at you, but that was the only thing that sprang to mind. What are we doing? You know, like everyone at the moment has to be an activist. Yeah. They have to be. We are in trouble. You know, this isn't going to get any better. This virus is spreading. It's a cancer, and it's taking people down, and it's taking people down with them. Everyone right now, especially if you've got kids, grandkids, should be involved at least in some kind of activism. And if you're not, it means that you don't care enough about the world that your kids are going to live in and your grandchildren are going to live. That is the brutal truth of it. And I don't know, and I've got many friends, family members, that see the stuff that is going on and they're not bothered. And that to me is not acceptable. That to me will be the thing that I take to my grave over everything in the world that has happened here. It will be the people that do not care while this is going on around them. And it breaks my heart, Kervin. It breaks my heart because I look at my little niece and nephew and I know I can look at them in the face, and I tried my best. But what about other people, you know? And it's going to take all of us. And people are not getting involved like they need to get involved.
And that is the real truth. We actually have a responsibility to create a legacy that we can, when we lay our heads down, we can actually say, you know, I did that, I did my bit, and my children or my grandchildren are going to have a better life because of it, right?
Absolutely.
We can't just walk on this planet and tread on all the beautiful flowers and then, you know, get to the end of the garden and say, right, okay, well, you know, they were our flowers, they were during our time. If you want to have flowers, go and plant your own. I mean, how does that work? Because at the end of the day, what's happening is we're raping the nation. We're raping and pillaging, just as the cannibals did centuries ago, right? We're ripping off all of its riches. Well, we're not, but we are, because we're part of it. And if we're not doing something to stop it, if we're not part of the solution, then we are part of the problem, right?
Absolutely.
So for me, when I do like, and I've used this analogy before, but I love the Richard Pryor movie. What was it called again? Brewster's Millions.
Okay, I haven't seen that.
You haven't seen Brewster's Millions?
No.
So just let me just give you a very quick roundup on that before we go back into your book, right? So he's approached by this massive firm who are looking after his grandfather's estate, right? And the grandfather says, right, you've got 30 days to spend $30 million. But in 30 days, you must spend $30 million and have nothing to show for it, right? Nothing you have must be worth a cent by the time that 30 days is up. And if you can successfully do that, you inherit $300 million. Right?
Wow.
It's a bit of a comedy film, right? So he goes off on his trek and he's now got to try and find ways of spending this money. But the underwriters, the people that are looking after the grandfather's estate, are determined to trip him up and find a way of making sure that, because if he doesn't, they get to keep the 300 million and invest it. Right? So they're doing everything that they can to trip him. And his last big stance, which was absolutely awesome, right? He's going up for mayor, right? He's going up for mayor. And his whole campaign was based on vote for none of the above, including him. Right? He was doing TV adverts because he had to be left with nothing. And if he won the mayor, he would inherit the salary that comes from being a mayor. So he had to. Anyhow, they tried to trip him up, and how they tripped him up is not the point. But the point was how he was able to successfully, right? And I know it was only a movie, but it's one that I fantasize over. Imagine if we could do that, recreate that in our world, right? He managed to get everybody to vote for none of the above, so nobody got the vote. Nobody got the vote. So I would imagine what happens then is that new parties have to be formed or whatever. But what if none of the above meant that nobody was satisfied with it being run by a government, that you now had to come up with a whole new formula in order to go forward now, because this has just crashed. You've just had 20 million or 30 million people, whatever, have said we don't believe in this democracy, right? We have no confidence in it, right?
Yeah.
So now we as a people have an opportunity to recreate a new platform in which we go forward from. And if you had an opportunity to speak on what that would look like, what would you say, Tony?
Wow. I mean, see, I don't look, I mean, I try not to anyway. I don't look at humanity at the level of consciousness that they're at the moment. 90% of people are at pretty low level in terms of belief systems, how they feel about themselves, having no power. They feel like things have always been this way, so they can't change anything. They just take everything at face value. When I'm talking about like new systems and new ways of being, if you like, I do feel like we are at a crossroad right now, and I feel like I like to look at it as an opportunity, because we do have the numbers, and I feel that in our true state, in our true nature, I mean, you imagine, like we were talking earlier about the unity that you experienced in that sauna. Imagine that on a worldwide scale. Yeah, imagine, just imagine that, and imagine a population of people that cared. We touched on that earlier, that how people don't care like they should. Imagine where everyone cared about, the world they grew up in. Imagine that. And imagine that everyone had the courage, and they moved out of that fear zone, that if there was a problem, that they would be prepared to face it and take the necessary action. Now that would be it would be a very different society that we have today. And I think with that kind of society, which is very much similar to what we were talking about, the Native Americans or the Aborigines, we can live in peace and harmony, and we can snap out of what we've whatever spell we're under, and we'll work it out. Okay, we've got the government aren't here to build the roads, so there's you, John, there's you, Mike. Why don't you do that? If you do that, then Pete over there and Bob over there, they'll collect your bins for 2 days. And do you see what I mean? It's like we can work it out. I mean, we're not stupid. We don't need government to tell us what we already know needs to be done. And that's how I see it. And I don't know if I'll see that in my lifetime, but I feel like we have to at least.
Here's one of my great thoughts, Tony. Here's one of my great thoughts, and I really don't know how this pans out with anybody else, but people have to ask the question: without money, would we still be able to do all the things that we did? Absolutely, I say. So the only reason people think they need to be governed is because somebody has to control the money.
Mm.
But if everybody did what they did anyway, because these were the things that had to be done, they would love doing it more. They wouldn't feel like they were under pressure. And yes, I suppose some people say, well, all right, well, if they don't turn up, it don't get done. Well, somebody else can go and do it, you know?
Yeah.
But I still think that enough things will get done, right, that we would still be able to survive and prosper, right, and progress and improve. You know, planes would have still been built. You know, some of the greatest inventors invented with nothing. They weren't rich when they invented. They didn't have this big mega bank balance to play around with trials and stuff. They just created the things that they created.
But that's what we are, Kervin. Like, you know, that's a really important point. And I spoke about this earlier on another podcast. We are creative beings. That's what we are inherently in our nature. I mean,
absolutely.
we are part of creation, right? So we are part creators. And like, I mean, this is one of the big resentments I've got against the system. I feel that it stole my creativity because I was stuck in that rat race, and you know, I did several different jobs, banks, estate agency, and all kinds of stuff. But I never had time. You know what it's like. You're working all week, get the weekend, you just want to put the football on, sink a few beers, and then just forget about the fact that you've worked so hard, and you know your boss doesn't care about you. So you know, that's a cycle that goes on and on, which actually led me to ask the questions about my book. But yeah, so it's like, I forgot my train of point there. But yeah, so this goes on, and yeah, I got to the age of, I mean, it was only at the age of sort of 34, 35 that I actually realised I could write, because I'd never had the time to give it that attention, and I love writing now. You know, I write blogs regularly. I'm starting another book, and my God, like we have so much more than just the 9-to-5ers. And everyone has got a creative spark within them. Even this show now, right? This is your creation. You created the show, and you, no doubt, you'll get a warm feeling from that. That gives you that fuzzy feeling inside because you're creating, right?
Yeah.
And that is a big part that we need to reconnect with, and I think it's a big part of the solution, because the kids growing up now, I don't know, they seem to be a lot smarter. I mean, they seem to reject a lot of the stuff that we used to do when I was young. Like, they don't seem to drink as much alcohol, and I know they've got their problems, but they do seem a little bit more advanced in their thinking. And you know, creativity is like a muscle. I've found the more you use it, the more you get. Yeah. It's like it's like tapping into a well. You tap and you get a little bit, but then you keep tapping and it just opens up. And I feel like if we were to have a more evolved society and we got in touch with our innate creativity, I feel like we could create new ways to, you know, work in harmony with nature and clean the oceans up and do the necessary things that we need to do and find new ways. I feel like we're a very innovative race. We've just forgotten it. And I mean, that may be many years ahead, but I see that as our potential. What we're seeing now is us at our worst. And I think we need a big shift. I always say there's three things, and I talk about this in the book. There's three things that we need to progress from where we are. 3 words. And the first one is care. We need to care enough about what's going on around us. First step, we need to care about the state of the world. And I don't mean care on a lower level about the bubble, which is your family and friends. I'm talking about care that is affecting the world of everyone's experience. The
wider community.
Exactly, yeah. So the first one is care. The second word is courage, because if you've got care but no courage, you ain't going to do nothing. Fear is going to stop you. So the courage, which again is like a well, we've all got it. People might have fear, but you can overcome that. You start tapping into that well of courage, you get more. So courage will launch us into being able to take action. And then the third word is imagination. You know, if we can't imagine, and this is where people get stuck at base one. You say, well, imagine a world without government. Oh, world without government? Oh, I can't imagine that. And then that's it. That's the argument over for them. There's always been government. No, hang on a minute. Think about humanity. Imagine. I always say to people, imagine humanity with all its potential. Put away all those belief systems of it's always been this way, or we're not good enough, or we don't have any power. Imagine humanity at its absolute amazing best. You know, just even make it up. And then that's when you get people thinking, well, maybe we could do this and maybe we could do that. And it's like, yeah, we could. And we can. And this is it. This is what we have to get away from. What has been created is all that we can create. And this is what these 1%ers are terrified. They know we've got these creative abilities. That's why the arts have been so heavily reduced. They don't want us in the right side of our brain. You know, they want us on the left side of the brain, which is all about logic and reason, and there's no creativity there. It's all about structure, university, and repeating, and very analytical. The right side is the part of the brain which is innovative. I can't even say it.
Innovatively.
Yeah, and that is the creative aspect of ourselves. And care, courage, imagination, and action are the fourth word. And if we can just rediscover that, but that takes deep introspection into one's own psyche as well. You know, it's a long journey, because first you have to realise that within yourself. You have to realise, am I a slave or am I a sovereign? When I was born onto this world, what is it? What am I at the moment when I'm paying 60% taxes and the Queen's paying nothing? Does that make me a sovereign person or a slave? The first thing is being brutally honest with ourselves. Well, okay, so maybe I'm in a bit of a condition of slavery here. Well, okay, is that your natural way of, is that right that it should be that way? Well, no, it's not. So how do you feel about that? Well, I shouldn't, there's no reason why they should own it all and they should be ordering us around. So that's right then. So what you're basically saying is that you're a sovereign being. Yeah, I'm saying that. And it's like it's asking those questions in your own mind, which is where my book title started. Are you living or just existing? Which is the question I asked myself in my kitchen about 5 years ago after a long day at work with an argument with the boss. Big sigh, and I just remember it clear as day. I'm not living here, I'm existing. Why is that? Why have I allowed myself at 33 years of age to just plod along like this? And I wanted to know, and then other questions came in. Is there a God? What is my purpose? I'm here for more than just this. And then you start asking those big questions in life, and the answers will come to you. But you've got to care enough to ask those questions. And then that's when life unfolds. That's when your purpose doesn't unfold. It's almost like, whatever you want to call it, God, the universe, something higher is waiting. It's waiting for you to knock on the door and say, hello, what am I here for? Oh, you've arrived finally. Thank God for that. We've been waiting for 33 years. Come in, take a sit down. Right, this is, have a look at this researcher, read this book, and it's like it all gets given to you. And then all of a sudden you've got a picture of the world and, a lot more direction.
I suppose the big question you've got to ask yourself is, A, you're born, that's guaranteed, right?
Mm-hmm.
B, you die. That's guaranteed, right? So that bit in the middle, what's that all about? Because if that's the only two objectives that you have in life, is A, to be born, and B, to be dead, well, you might as well just be born and die on the same day, because nothing else will matter. But that bit in the middle is the most important part. What do you do with that? Because when you're born, people will celebrate your birth. But when you're not guaranteed for people to celebrate your death.
Yeah.
So you've got to do something with that bit in the middle. Right?
Absolutely.
Now, most people just exist through that bit in the middle. What they do is they get up, they go to work, they come back, they go to sleep, they get up, they go to work, they come back, they go to sleep, they get up, they go to work, they come back, they go to sleep. And the only thing they believe they can make a difference with or impact is just that little world around their house or their workstation, and that's it.
Yeah.
But there is so much more going on in the world that we could influence if we only took the time to find out what we've actually got to offer to it.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think that's where people fall short, because they can't see the role that they can make or they have in influencing the world. There was once a story, right? And it went. I can't remember it parrot fashion, but it went something like this. There was a fellow who tried to change the world, right? And that was his one dream, right? As long as he lived, all he dreamt of was that he wanted to change the world. And now he is lying on his deathbed, and he was reflecting, thinking back to what he'd done, and realised that he'd actually done nothing. He hadn't been able to affect the world. And then it dawned on him, he thought to himself, well, maybe if I'd have started up with me, I could have made a difference to my family. And then once I made a difference to my family might have been able to make a difference to my street. And then my street might have made a difference to my village could have made a difference to my town could have made a difference to my country, and my country might have made a difference in the world.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think,
that's very powerful.
Because it starts with us.
Yeah.
We're all waiting for this.
Starts with number one.
We're all waiting for this big change to take place. We're all waiting for somebody else to do it. We all come up with these ideas, and then we sit down there and we're waiting for somebody else to implement it, so that we can say, yeah, I knew it would work. But none of us are prepared to take that risk of going out there and saying, listen, try this. This. I'm going to be the first one to go and do this because I want to show everybody else it works. It's better. Yeah. It's good. Right? We'd rather sit on the fence and continue, right, shoveling the crap inside of us. Let's just take it. And I'll right at the beginning of the show, we talked. You mentioned obesity, right? And me and my wife has mentioned this umpteen times. In my generation, it wasn't the norm. It was absolutely out of the ordinary to see somebody who was large and obese. Now, obesity is normal. Yeah. It's the standard. You walk down the road nowadays, and almost everybody is verging on obesity. Yeah. Right. And I don't get it. It's become an acceptable way to be. Girls have stopped taking care of the. And I'm not going back. I don't want the hourglass. I'm not talking about the hourglass figure or those that are taking so much cocaine that they've got anorexia. I'm not talking about that. I'm just talking about full-bodied people, men and women, right? The men don't have to pump steroids to look like flipping Arnold Schwarzenegger, and women don't have to eat 30 McDonald's a day to look like. Do you know what I mean? Yeah, absolutely. I think a lot of it is. I think the food is really dumbing people down, particularly in the States with the GM. We're living in a microwave society, aren't we?
Yeah, I mean, you've got
fast food business, everything now.
And I mean, when I went back to the UK, this was another disturbing thing that I saw. I walked down I walked down the high street, and I had like a Twilight Zone moment, because as I was walking down, I realised how grey everyone looked. Yeah. No one, it was like I was in a movie, like some
colourless
kind of horror, like colourless, devoid of expression, devoid of. It was almost like the soul had left, and it was like I was walking through a town of zombies, and it was like a flash in it was like I'm in some kind of zombie film. And the sun's getting blocked out with the geoengineering, no one's getting their vitamin D. You've got the food where no one's getting their nutrition. And then, of course, when you combine that, people, they're being asked to do ungodly hours, which are a human being is not supposed to be grinding away in an office for 50, 60, 70 hours
your
a week.
Your life should not consist of going to work, coming home and sleeping, just enough rest to get you back to work the following day. That should not be what you're
No. So most people are beaten up by the system, and many people have got kids. They're trying to support. Wages are staying the same, but the cost of living's going up. So mentally they're beaten up. Spiritually they're beaten up. Physically they're beaten up. So it's a doddle to control, right? If you're the 1% and you've got a sick population, it's a doddle. And unfortunately that is the case. But we still have choices where we if we care enough to say, well, hang on a minute, I'm not going to put up with this. This isn't just my life. I'm going to make some changes, and I need to look into why. I mean, I was going down that route, Kervin. I had stomach problems. My diet was bad. I was watching junk on the TV, and then I was doing the hours that, but all the hours that God sent. I was running a branch, and I was one of those people. And you can change it around. You really can. You just got to care enough and want it enough, and really just tap into that self-love. I mean, it's like, come on, is this all I'm really worth? Do I really have such a low opinion of myself that I feel like this is all I'm worth? Because ultimately that's what happened to me. Things had got so mundane and boring and depressing. I thought, no. I knew deep down that I was better than what I was doing, and I knew I had potential, and we can all tap into that. It's just sometimes you have to grind it out, and really sometimes it just takes getting to such a bad place to. I mean, you see it with health, don't you? People they start looking after their health after they've just recovered from cancer, because they've been, and it's a similar kind of thing. But I appeal to people like, don't leave it too late. I don't. Especially if there's any younger listeners, you're in your 20s, or life passes by really quickly. You know this, Kervin, and you by the time you're in your mid-30s, your decades are going down, and just don't leave it to chance. Like, everyone has got a much bigger purpose than a 9 to 5, but you won't find it unless you care enough to go down that road and explore. And sometimes that can take weeks and months of introspection and finding out what works for you, what you like, what your passion is, what excites you, and we can do it through creativity. I'm a firm believer of that. So anyone can do it.
I kind of go around this thought, and I think about it. I actually haven't got a problem with people who think that a certain way might be the right way to be, or providing they've taken the time to investigate and listen to other options.
Yeah.
I've never been a sheep follower. I've never. I was a. You sound very much like me when I was younger, Tony. I was very rebellious and anti-authoritarian, very much so. And it was because of the experiences that I had with people in authority who abused it when I was very young, that gave me that impression that I just couldn't trust them and I didn't want to be like them.
Yeah.
So I've always challenged authority. Although I fully appreciate there has to be a sensible authority for us to exist. The unfortunate thing is those that have been in it, those that have had it, those that have run it, those that have been responsible for it, have misused it for so many years that it no longer means what it used to mean for us. I do a lot of shows on police brutality, for example, as you know, stateside. And one of the things that we often talk about is, where's the community cop gone? The guy that that the community knew, that the guy that used to be able to go in there and stop a fist fight and get the guy to put the knife down or the gun down. Where's he gone? Instead, we've got
they're military personnel now, basically.
Absolutely, but that's what you've got responding to every community event. So therefore, the community and law enforcement are not at peace anymore. You can't trust them. And it's the same thing with our governments and our politicians and the people that are in power. They have this very same me, myself and I mentality. We don't matter anymore. So until we get into a place where we can visually see, right, that whatever's taking place here, that I matter in this. Because that's what we need to get. We need to get to that point where we realize we matter. We matter and we can make a difference. We have to.
Absolutely.
You know? Because at the minute, what people are doing is they're repetitive robots who are following other people and have no beliefs of their own. Right? And it's like the guy, I've spent time in prison. So it's like the guy who you meet in prison, right? Who's telling somebody else's story as if it's his own.
Yeah.
Right. The guy's been in jail for about 10 years, and he's been hearing this guy on the block talking about he used to do this and he used to do that. Now the guy's left the block and he's now gone to another prison, and this guy's sitting in here telling his story, right? Like it was him that did it, you know?
Yeah.
And you're building reputations on somebody else's story, and that's what a lot of people are doing in life. They are building their own reputations on somebody else's story. They are running on somebody else's steam. They are living on somebody else's power, and they've got none of their own. And I like the concept of your book. Are you living? Are you living or just existing? Because until you start making your own decisions, your own choices, when you start investigating and operating under your own belief system, only then will you start living.
Absolutely. Yeah. Summed that up perfectly.
Well, listen, Tony, I want to leave. You've got about 3 or 4 minutes to just wrap this up, mate, and take us home and give us some real selling points on the book. Before we wrap this up.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I mean, the whole train of what we've been talking about is just discovering our power. I mean, that's really what the book is all about. It's really, getting people to question authority and to step back into their own power and to realise that this whole little me syndrome it's delusional. It's not true. And we are very, very powerful once we do step into our power. But we also need to show discernment as well. Discernment is something that I talk about a lot. We've got to stop taking people at face value. And, a lot of these politicians, what they say, they can make us feel good, but, they never deliver. Like, we've got to grow up. We've got to start questioning people. Like, I always say to people, don't even listen to me. You've got to do your own. We've got to start thinking critically and thinking in general, because, like you said earlier, people are not, and that's really at the basis of what it is. And I hope that the intention with the book is that whatever camp you're in, living or existing, there is still benefits to the book, because I touch on many subjects in there, and it's really like a wake-up call to get people to step into their own sovereignty and their own power. And I think when enough of us start to do that, I think that's when the world will change. But yeah, I mean, you can buy it now. It's on Amazon. It's on Kindle. Amazon are actually, a little bit greedy on what they take in their percentage. So if you would like me to have the royalties, if you are interested in the book, you can go to my website, which is www.transcendingtimes.org, and you go under the book section, and you can order a paperback directly from me. It's also available there on ebook. And like I say, Amazon Kindle as well. So that's www.transcendingtimes.org. And yeah, I'll be writing my new book, starting that now. I've got a subscription mailing list as well for anyone that wants to keep in touch and want updates on my work, and it's constantly changing and evolving and that kind of thing. But yeah, I just really like to extend my thanks to you against Kervin. I really enjoy your passion and coming onto your shows, and I think you do a great job for humanity, and especially with the police brutality stuff. And long may it continue to because you're one of those people that do care, and I really appreciate you.
Well, Tony, I just want to thank you for coming on the show and sharing what you shared with us today. You've inspired me today, and it's been an absolutely fantastic discussion. And I think we've managed to exchange some real great views that will give people an opportunity to maybe search themselves a bit more and see that they actually have got a power within that can enable them to do better, to reach further, to care more, be more courageous. And yes, discernment is a word that I know and utilize quite a lot, because we're not supposed to take anything that everybody says at face value. We've got to research. We've got to check it out. For me, the spiritual word says, taste and you will see. And you've got to taste. You can't just take somebody's word for it. You've got to try it out for yourself. So, Tony, I just want to thank you for coming on the show. The show will be available, uploaded on YouTube very shortly. We look forward to catching up with you again and wish you all the best for all the work that you're doing out there in Thailand. I got it right, in Thailand.
Yes.
All right. And I just want to thank you for sharing this time with us. Thank you very much, Tony.
Thanks a lot, Kervin. You take care.
Okay. You take care, mate. God bless.
Bye. Bye-bye.
Do you like music like this?
Great music all the time.
Or like this?
The music you love.
Maybe this.
Great music that makes you want to turn up the volume loud.
Or life chat like this.
Especially where human life is concerned. Surely, sooner or later, people will realize that lives actually matter.
Then you're in the right place. Keep it locked to World Jam Global, where music is harmony.
Music 24 hours a day, 365 days a year.
Yeah, you're a World Jam. Hotter than them.
See live schedule.
Oh, once again, I just want to thank Tony Sayers for an absolutely fantastic and frank discussion. Are you living or just existing?
I paid for my crime.
That's the name of his book.
I already did my time. I paid for my crime.
And we'll try and put around some links so you can find out where that book is available from.
I already did my time. I paid for my crime. I already did my time. I paid for my crime. I already did my time. I paid for my crime.
Don't forget, you can catch me tomorrow morning on my Wake Up Everybody Sunday Gospel Show.
I didn't really care about the system. It was all about survival. It was do or die. I had too many rivals. I was too young and foolish to stay in school. I learned my lessons in the streets. There was not a man I couldn't beat. I was good with my hands and very quick on my feet. I was swimming in women. I had girls all over the street. I was getting money. Life is so sweet. Now things have changed. The whole game has been rearranged. I'm a change man.
That really was a great discussion.
And it ain't about being no gangster.
And if there's anything that you've learned today is that you don't have to be robotic.
Trying to cope with this living hell.
Search your inner self.
My time.
Look for the truth.
Already.
You haven't got to settle for second best. There is so much potential lying down inside of you.
Already did my time. I paid for my crime.
World Jam Global Radio. This is class.
Already did my time. I paid for my crime.
I want to say a big thank you to our producer, Teresa.
Already did my time. I paid for
helping putting the show together once again.
I was a drug dealer, sold more drugs than Superfly, but I never got high on my own supply. I'm not proud of what I had to do. That's why I'm telling my story to you and you. I had to repent. I must admit, I was doing all kind of stupid shit. Now,
you missed the first 10 minutes. I'm sorry for the technical difficulties that we had at the beginning, but we got it right in the end. That's the most important thing.
Brain was so numb, I was a real...
My name is Kervin Julien. This has been another edition of Issues Today on World Jam Global Radio.
I was the real...
Alongside my guest, Tony Sayers.
I'd chew you up and spit you out like a real alligator.
Talking about his brand new book, Are You Living or Just Existing?
Right now, he could be facing life in prison.
My time, pay for my...
And just a reminder, you can get the ebook or get a copy where Tony can get the royalties on www.transcendingtimes.org. We'll try and put a link up there for you later on Issues Today. And I think if I was you, I would. That's where I'd go and find the book. www.transcendingtimes.org.
Get this felony off my back so I can get my life on track.
That's his website. You can also keep up with his blogs, or vlogs as they call them now.
To all of my friends,
That's video blogging. Vlog.
There was not a man I couldn't beat.
World Jam Global Radio, this is Clarity.
We're out of here.
I was swimming in women. I had girls all over the street. I was getting